Early.
Uhuru.
Early. Okay, we're live. And it's 5. Tasha?
Thank you, Brother Yusuf. Greetings and welcome everyone that is tuning in with us for this very, very special, very important JOCO special programming, The Attack on the African People's Socialist Party, What We Need to Know Now. We are, of course, JOCO Collective, community self-education outfit. We like to think of ourselves as a site for the clearinghouse, as a clearinghouse of information that we rely on for our and to realize our ambitions toward liberation. And so we like to closely examine and review what we think we know. Okay. And we want to put as much time into this discussion as we can. So I am going to go straight to the framing of the program, introduce our guests so we can go on and get into it. The social and political stability of the US stands uneasily astride an energized anti-government white right, stoking a new civil war and a frustrated general population hungry for relief through investment in the social infrastructure. Beneath it all, supporting the entire edifice, stands the suffering Black nation, the suffering, rumbling, stirring Black nation, the colonized African nation in the United States of America. The July 29th, 2022 raids against the Uhuru movement, invading the home of Chairman Omali and Vice Chair Onazine Yeshitela, other members of the African People's Socialist Party, APSP Properties, and the African People's Solidarity Committee represent only the most recent in a long thread of state attacks on the African liberation movement since ever there was a United States. The efforts to suppress independent political organizing among Africans, Africans organizing in our own best interests on our own terms, accomplish within the settler colony what the US military forces accomplish internationally. Why is African liberation so contrary to US interests? This JOCO welcomes Chairman Omali Yeshitela, founder and chair of the African People's Socialist Party, a revolutionary leader whose vision and theoretical worldview means achieving revolution in his lifetime. He has dedicated his life to providing the science and organization necessary to build a global movement of African workers to unite and liberate their motherland of Africa and to win. In creating the African People's Socialist Party, he united the theory and practice to liberate Africa and Africa's resources from the grip of colonialism based on the understandings of African internationalism. He has taught the world that capitalism is parasitic, built on slavery and colonialism. He built the mass movement for reparations, holding the World Tribunal on Reparations to African People in 1982, and led the world in making reparations a household word. He has taken the movement beyond protest, creating over 50 institutions as the infrastructure for the liberated African workers' economy. He is the author of many books, including his most recent book and report to the 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party, Vanguard, the Advanced Detachment of the African Revolution. He is the founder and leader of the Uhuru movement and provides leadership for the world's anti-colonial revolutionary struggle. Welcome, Chairman Omali Yeshitela.
Uhuru, first of all, I'd like to really express my appreciation to you, Sister Tasha, and to everyone with the Joko Collective, and express my appreciation for the kind of work that you do. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. And we welcome Sister Mwezi Odom. Mwezi joined the African People's Socialist Party to turn over her skills to the Vanguard Workers' Party under the leadership of the African working class. In her capacity, she serves as the administrative assistant to the office of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and leads the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Defense Campaign. Mwezi is a proud African woman, a lover of African internationalism. She believes Africa and her people will once again be free and self-governing in her lifetime. And she is the mother of two of Africa's best daughters. Welcome, Sister Mwezi.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Sister Tasha. And I just want to again echo Chairman's sentiments and appreciate Joko Collective and this opportunity to be here tonight. Uhuru.
Thank you so much, Sister. And we welcome our dear comrade, James Simmons. James is a political activist who has worked for human rights and self-determination of oppressed people and against their exploitation and abuse by individual predators, organizations, and governments over the last 5 decades. A key part of James' resistance work is training and organizing community members for personal and collective defense. And he has been a thought and praxis leader in developing self-determined community-based responses to violence. Since 1990, he has organized locally, regionally, and nationally to address numerous violations, including sexual exploitation, torture, theft, rape, and elder abuse in the Black community. Additionally, he has been called upon to provide advice on de-escalation in instances of the intergroup attacks between Black and Brown communities. James is a professor of Africana Studies at the California State University at Northridge. He is an attorney in the state of California and its federal courts, and federal courts. Among many other things, which we will leave out of this particular introduction. Welcome, Brother James.
Oh, thank you for having me on, and I'm so honored to be on the same program as the chairman and Sister Mwezi. Very happy.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, I turn the program over to our dear comrade, Yusuf Imhotep, and Yusuf, who is ever modest, but is an instructor of over so many years and has so many levels of education in the community that I can't name them. An instructor in English literature, in African and African American literature for over 20 years, and currently working on his dissertation in Africana and Media Studies. And if there's anything else he wants to share, he just might. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Sister Tasha. Thank you. And actually, the degree is in cultural studies with media and Africana studies as the subcategories. But, in fact, it's all like of a piece, right? So those are just, details. And yes, welcome, welcome. So, glad to have you here. But, wish it was different circumstances, right? The first thing on the agenda is a summation, right, of exactly what's going on, what's at stake. And I know that Mwezi, you brought a video for us for you to share, to give us that grounding. So go ahead, share your screen. You can share that video now.
All right, let me share that for you right now, comrades. Uhuru. All right. Okay, I don't know if you can see it now. It just looks like it disappeared again.
Yeah, we could, and then it disappeared. Yeah.
Exactly. Let me try that one more time.
Okay.
Thank you. Just have to paste this in this window over here. All right.
Yeah.
Here we go.
This is the FBI. We have a federal warrant for this address. Your hands up and follow orders. This is the FBI. We have a warrant.
They handcuffed me and my wife out here. They wanted me to sit on the curb while they were carrying this out. Something that I refused to do. They wanted my wife to sit on the curb out here that she refused to do.
As I was coming out, this big old drone met me.
The only revolutionary organization that's done something here on the ground practically for African people is the one that's come under attack. Institution that offers a community radio station, a newspaper, a commercial kitchen, an Aquaba Hall rental space, and community office for our organizers. That was the building that has come under attack.
In a breach, what do you mean? They won. I don't know. I told them that money. Oh, they did.
We will build a movement of white people that says hands off.
They see in the African People's Socialist Party a vanguard for the struggle for the liberation of our people. They see that because not just what we do here in the United States, but because we had the temerity to do like Garvey, to do like Malcolm X, and take the struggle of Black people around the world.
Thank you, Sister Mwezi. I mean, that, made it clear. And actually, I saw footage that I hadn't seen before, right? So I really appreciate that. So when looking at that, right, what's at stake from these attacks? And Chairman, if you would like to answer that, what's at stake?
I think that's an extremely important question. I mean, there are several things at stake. Obviously, there are some things at stake in terms of our own personal security. in terms of the security of our organization, because we came to learn on that day, and we've learned more, bit more since that time, that we are so-called non-indicted co-conspirators. That is, I am Comrade Akile Anai, who oversees our information and education process and all of our communications and educational institutions out of St. Petersburg, Florida. Jesse Neville, who is a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee and who leads the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and Comrade Penny Hess. We're all unindicted co-conspirators, but so are our organizations. It's not just us, but our organizations are thrown in there as well. And there is an inferred assumption that more people than those who have been almost identified, because they didn't put us by name. They didn't name the individuals in anything that's been established publicly. So all of that's at stake in terms of their desire to disrupt, and of course the fact that we are non-indicted co-conspirators and unnamed to the general public and and nothing has been filed in court. It means that the legal standing is of some significance, because they can do all the stuff they've done. They've stolen tremendous amounts of information, communications from us, and have the ability to construct any kind of narrative that they want to construct with that. And they did something like $40,000 in damage that we've had to repair. Their objective was they put this out there, and it's not like we can even file a suit that says, it's even not like we can even go to court to defend ourselves, because there's nothing to defend yet. There's no legal standing in that sense. And but there is an element of terror that's associated with this. This is why, I mean, when I came out the house at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was greeted not only by armored vehicles in front of the house, the fact that the community had been cordoned off. We had it was a military force, and they were armed with assault weapons. And these assault weapons were mounted with laser targeting devices, and these devices were bouncing off my chest. So you have these laser beams, dots all over my chest. Absolutely unnecessary, except as a method of terror. And in fact, I thought they were going to kill me. That's what I thought it was important for them to show that they could kill me if they wanted to do that at that moment. So the fact is that every day we've come to understand that an indictment is due. Indictments are due any day now. And in fact, I'm surprised that it has not occurred yet. And this, of course, has a certain kind of impact on assumptions you can make in terms of being able to move forward and move the agenda. But we have not hesitated, not a single step. And I think it's really important because, as it has been inferred and sometimes stated in introducing this discussion that we're having now, is historical. This is historical, and I was really appreciative of the introduction, because part of what I think is important for us to understand, when I say us, I'm talking about Africans and people who attempt to make sense of what's happening with African people, is that freedom has always been illegal. There's never been a time where being free for African people in this country has been legal. We were brought here at gunpoint. We are not, like those people who they like to point to constituting some kind of part of a nation of immigrants. We deny that the United States is a nation. We characterize it as a prison of nations, and African people are not immigrants, we're captives. We were brought here at gunpoint. And since being brought here, our struggle has been to move in some way to end the terror, end the oppression, and no matter whether it's been called slavery, whether it's been called Jim Crow, whether it's been called integration or what have you, the thing that has characterized our relationship to this country in particular is an expropriation of our right for self-determination. So if we're integrated, we have no self-determination. In slavery, we have no self-determination, whatever is characterized and what have you. And I think it's important for us to understand that the thing that was so powerful about the movement led by Marcus Garvey in particular was that it was an understanding that it's not enough just to make a better way in the United States, which is where people are today, trying to find a better way, that the objective has to be, we have to be a self-governing people, self-reliant, self-governing, self-determining people with our future in our own hands. And that's the thing that I think is extremely important, and why this struggle is important, because there's a way we can capitulate to the struggle. There's a way, and obviously nobody's interested in being martyrs. I'm not interested in that. You know, I mean, we got enough pictures, we can make posters and sell them and make some money, hopefully, off of that. But martyrdom is not something that we're looking forward to. We want to win. And winning, of course, doesn't necessarily mean that it will be decided at a particular battle. You know, Vietnam should have taught the Americans that. They won all kinds of battles but lost the war. And I really believe that there's a turning point that we've achieved in history. And we talk about this being a final offensive in historical terms, not in terms of some specific, war that is the way it's usually understood, but in historical terms, the final offensive of the oppressed to overturn this relationship we have with a social system that has come into being at the expense of Africans and other colonized people around the world. So that's a long answer.
Yeah, but it gives it the detail it requires. So yeah. Thank you. Sister Mwezi, let me ask you then, hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. So what has been Uhuru's response to this since the attacks?
Uhuru, well, the main response, and I just want to appreciate the chairman's response to that initial question, because part of the response is to continue to do what is needed in this moment, which is to, as the chairman has said, we are not retreating, we are building. And so we have the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa defense campaign as the, it's a defense campaign in defense of the party, but as the chairman has described, this is a counter offensive. We have to understand that, as the chairman has just, articulated, that they're, fighting for freedom, fighting for freedom under this system of colonialism, under this colonial mode of production is illegal. And so we have a responsibility to, as we say, put the state on trial and to wage a serious fight back through this campaign. And, one of the things that this campaign has to do, and cannot skirt around is to raise the resources, because as the chairman said, there are threats of indictments, and really any day now, and we have to be able to have the resources to secure our legal representation should we go to trial. And so we are using this, all the democratic space, just like this space with Joko Collective to let the people know. And I can't recall how Sister Tasha opened it up, and you said something about how learning what we do not know. And I think, this is a time where we are in a fierce ideological and political, struggle and battle. And we have to be able to, make it clear for the people what is at stake. And that, as this campaign says, this is not just an attack on, freedom. This is an attack on Africa, on African people, on the right for self-determination. And so the party's response has been the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa defense campaign. We have had countless interviews and, opportunities to, to be out there in the world, having the chairman and others of the unindicted co-conspirators being, having interviews to be able to put this out there and to continue to call out the FBI for the, not just this attack on July 29th, but the countless attacks, which I can describe and share more, which, we want to let the people know that this was not just an isolated incident. And if I could add one thing, because we, the purpose of this is to also of this attack is to also neutralize, as the chairman said, and even define how we build and what we how we use our resources and our time. And on July 29th, another thing that's important to know is that on that day, we were starting the beginning of an African doula program, which was taking place in North St. Louis. And as we've said, North St. Louis is a place where, you have a situation where enough Black babies die in the first year of life to fill over 15 kindergarten classrooms. And this was the program that Deputy Chair, through the Black Power Blueprint, was initiating on July 29th. And although we were attacked, and although, it was a violent political attack, that program continued on. And 10 plus or 20 African women, 15, I believe, were able to, complete this program and are now working towards becoming certified doulas. And so we cannot, we have to continue to lead this, struggle in the fight back, but also in the overall, strategy, which is liberation and self-determination for African people. So that's part of what this campaign is doing. Uhuru.
Right on. And bravo and brava, right, for being able to keep that going.
Yes, yes.
And, in addition to
Chairman.
that, Comrade Youssef, that's an important program. And I think part of the thing that is really powerful is, and also I think it's a statement about the women's leadership in the party, that we would be doing that program. And another really important program that's being initiated, we bought the land for it, we paid the architect to pull the thing together in terms of what it's going to take to make it happen. We're raising money for Uhuru Wakalia. Which is a program of freedom. What does it translate into? Wakalia, Uhuru Wakalia, freedom to nurture. And it's a women's center. It's a women's center, health center, and it's an incredible project that's there. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of the party, for the leadership. Historically, I feel that we've brought to this whole question of African women's leadership. And this is, the thing is that it's always been underappreciated since our captivity. Not totally by us. I mean, everybody who's been an organizer has understood in the African community, when you go into a community, you want to organize, you find sister so-and-so, mother so-and-so. I mean, she, is usually the backbone. And, everybody had to be struck when they was murdering this young brother. The second one, we've seen them murder like this, and the brother calls for mama. Just something about the significance of women in the life and relationship of the African people, the African nation, the African community, the leadership that's always been there. So I think that's extremely an understated kind of thing, but you see it, I think it permeates and is interwoven into almost everything that we do. So that I think is extremely powerful. But this,
I think that's a key point, Chairman. I'm totally with you on that. That's a key point.
Yes. There's African women and young people are most slandered elements of our community. Most victimized. I mean, of course, you live under colonial domination. Everybody's catching hell under colonialism. And if I meet somebody who's completely normal under colonialism, and then I'm running from them because there's something abnormal about normality, living under colonial domination. But that's what it is that I think that constitutes what it is that we're doing. We've initiated I think a really powerful program. About the basketball court. We paid $150,000 for that basketball court. We raised that money. There's no Russians involved in this. People gave that money, and a lot of them were white people who gave it in the name of paying reparations to the African community in the form of economic development for the African community. We are purchasing a magnificent property. We bought it. It's our property where we are creating an economic development program. It's a Uhuru Cafe Bakery. We had such a cafe bakery in Oakland, California. And that was, that was firebombed in 1989 with the U.S. invasion of Panama. When we did a meeting in that center and marched from that center to a U.S. military Marines, I think it was, recruitment station, and protested there. On that same day, then that night, the bakery was torched, and then, but it wasn't that bad, we said. We can get this back in place in a week, and then later that night, it was torched again. So this is the kind of thing that we're dealing with, and I think it's really important, because our struggle is not to find a better way to accommodate slavery, our oppression, the loss, the theft of our capacity to be a self-governing, self-defining people. Is to recapture control of the productive forces of African people. We want the land back. We want the people back, and we want the influence what we need in order to produce, instead of going someplace else to come to Africa and African people. And this is something that's intolerable. This is why Venezuela is under attack. This is why all the peoples around the world, because this struggle to recapture the productive forces, which is what the struggle against colonialism is all about, cannot be tolerated. So as long as we're looking to find a new bill that would accommodate slavery, that's all right. And we're a small organization. And but that's a threat, a danger, and it's part of a movement that's happening globally, and it has to happen globally because we're looking at a global colonial mode of production. The entire planet Earth lives and functions within this mode of production. And that's why you see everywhere, 50s, you see Montgomery, but you also see in Indonesia, the Bandung Conference, and you see all this stuff happening more or less the same time, colonized people in motion trying to end this relationship. It's the final offensive now, Uhuru.
Uhuru. That brings this question up, right? And I think, especially after hearing your comments, Mwezi, what was that? Just St. Louis, Black infant mortality could fill 15 kindergartens, just the city of St. Louis. That's not even, okay. So, that brings me to this question, something I've heard you say before, Chairman, that this attack gives the movement a chance to put the U.S. on trial. Can you explain that?
That's what has to happen, because the charges alleged against us is that I went to Moscow, and we went to Moscow, and going to Moscow meant that at this process that we became employees, more or less, of Russia. That I became an agent of Russia. How do they put it? This foreign FARA. What does that stand for? Foreign Agent Registration Act. I violated the Foreign Agent Registration Act. So that's one aspect of it, of what happened. I went to Russia. I went to Moscow. They also said that this is true because in 2017, 2019, we ran elections in St. Petersburg, Florida. And it's the Russians who paid for those elections and who had us demanding reparations in those elections. And they, among the other things that we did in those elections, which also called for Black community control of the police on an election ballot platform, which, by the way, for what we went into one of those elections as a part of the Democratic Party and split the Democratic Party. The leadership of the Democratic Party left the Democratic Party for the purpose of working on the campaign of Akile Nai. So we put reparations for the first time in history in this country. We put reparations on the ballot. For the first time he ever did such a thing, Barack Hussein Obama, as president, came and interfered and intervened and in a local election and endorsed our opponent, the white man who's our opponent, who's guilty of so many offenses against African people. So we did that. We ran that election. Another thing that we did was that we traveled throughout the United States at a time where there were the United Nations had forces traveling and looking into the conditions of African people, and we went to almost every place they went. We had call it a winter campaign. People sleeping in tents and stuff in the snow in Washington, D.C. and in New York and in Jackson, Mississippi and in Chicago, Illinois. And we went there and to participate in those discussions. And we also initiated a campaign to get people to sign petitions that would take the United States, that would take to the United Nations for violation of the United Nations Convention on the punishment, on the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide. They said we did that, and the Russians are the ones who had us do that. And there's some other nasty thing that they said. I can't even remember the other right now. But the point is this. They didn't say that genocide is not being committed against African people.
Mhm.
They didn't say that that African people are not due reparations. They didn't say African people cannot travel like anybody else to different places around the world, etc. They said that we're not punishing you because you did that. We're attacking you because the Russians told you to do it. Therefore, we don't have to have a discussion around genocide. There's a convention on genocide that even it took the United States 40 years after the convention was passed at the United Nations to even ratify that. 40 years, and even that with conditions that the United States could not be held accountable for it. And all of the dialogue that happened said that they did it because they didn't want to be brought before the United Nations because of tried for what they've done to Africans and indigenous people in this country. And Lemke, the Jewish Polish Jew, who was the one who originated the genocide convention, did all this work for it, came out after Paul Robeson and others went to the United Nations to clarify that it didn't have nothing to do with Black people. This was not for Black people. So this is so let's talk about that. Let's say that I mean, I've been to Spain. The Spanish NGO invited me to come to Spain, paid me money, not only paid to get me there, but paid me money, an honorarium for coming there. And there were people from the United Nations, or formerly from the United Nations, and other governments who participated in this forum. Oxford University, I paid to go there, but they invited me to put a debate there. So what's the issue? The United States need to be able to answer the question of genocide and not try to hide behind this thing about the Russians and what have you. And also, you mentioned earlier that this is one of the most extraordinary fabrications that they've used. You know, they charged W.E.B. Du Bois with the same crime, the same offense. They put him on trial for, violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act and what have you. They took Paul Robeson before the Senate hearing. Are you now, have you ever been a communist? The Russians were the ones who influenced you to do this.
Right.
They did this to Garvey, even though, and this is the thing about, this is the founding of the FBI, the cutting teeth of the FBI, cut his teeth with the attack on Marcus Garvey. So historically, that's been the case. We want to go to court. I want to testify. I'm 81 years old, 81 years old. And all of my life, they have never seen an instance of life in this country where African people were not suffering daily abuses, humiliation, starvation, poverty. And guess what? I have a history of fighting against it for more than 50 years, almost 60 years. I have personally been involved in it. So I want to testify, and I want the United States to be able to explain, if you're attacking me now because of Russia, why did you attack the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg, Florida in 1996, 300 strong and at that time? Why did you come in 1960s, FBI knocking on my door and interrogating children who were part of my family back then? So it looks like there's a history there that predates that. Then I want to be able to explain the counterintelligence program that's associated with targeting Black people. You know, that the United States government said this was the guy who was Attorney General at the time, who declared that by the end of 1969, the Black Panther Party would be destroyed.
And they didn't say the Black Panther Party was going to commit offenses or anything. They would be destroyed. And the United States, and J. Edgar Hoover is alleged to have said that the Black Panther Party was the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States of America. So anybody who's ever fought for freedom, I want to have that discussion. And I want to have agents, explain that. And I want to be able to bring testimony from different people who are familiar with. I want to even have testimony from people who are familiar with the war in Ukraine, because that's one of the things they said. Our position around Ukraine was something that was paid for by the Russians, which is extraordinary. And I can teach them about their position around Ukraine, because and this is back to something that either you, Sister Tasha, said about the history of the relationship we have with communism, socialism, and what have you. I was just looking at a book the other day. It's in my office now. I haven't read the entire book, but just looking at the first few pages, and it talks about how this whole struggle against Jim Crow in the United States, and how it was Black people in this country, from this country, who taught the Russians about this thing, and that how in 1928, the Soviet Union, as a part of the Communist International, declared that African people in the United States were an oppressed nation. Not only were we an oppressed nation, it said that we were the leadership of the oppressed nations of the world, Africans in this country. So it's not Putin stuff. This is stuff that goes back a long time, and Africans taught them that. And Langston Hughes, I think, is the poet, may have been the poet, one of the poets who was there on the front lines of this struggle, et cetera. So, and the Soviet Union, Soviet Russia, has part of its curriculum. It taught in the schools. It declared that racism was a national security threat to Russia, and Putin probably went to classes himself where this was taught in Russia about racism in this country. And so, I want to be able to have these kinds of discussions, and part of course, what we're up against, as I'm sure that Comrade James Simmons will help us to understand, this whole rules of evidence. Right. Some of this stuff that they will not allow us to come into a courtroom with easily. So this also that we are doing right now has to be part of the courtroom. We have to use this to put the U.S. on trial. Every attack they make against us has to be something that exposes this history of oppression against African people. And one of the things that makes this a critical issue right now is that the United States is troubled in part because more and more people around the world, more of the colonized are fighting to take back our resources. And also, for the first time in a very long time, the United States is contending with other powerful forces in the international community. In the 1960s, this was important because the Soviet Union was challenging the legitimacy of the United States as the leadership of the world, a social system. It was criticizing the social system of capitalism under the leadership of the United States. And so the United States had to often show that it was okay. It had to try to do something positive for Black people to show that it was okay. And now, of course, the United States is contending with Russia, China, and it sees itself as having to contend with them based on which has the best system. And now what the United States has done is define these systems not based on communism and socialism, but based on democracy and autocracy. And how are you going to be this great democratic country when every time you open up a newspaper, there's a cop or white people killing Black people, and it's public knowledge. And there are scores of cities, states in this country who are doing right now things to deny Black people easy access to the ballot, all the things that Africans thought they won. And so in order to, this is a profound contradiction the United States has to resolve. And so let us tell the truth. Let us put the word out, because the colonialism cannot tolerate democracy. And what we are saying is that the highest expression of democracy is not the right to vote that people are fighting for and that we fought for harder than anybody in the world. For them to say that the Russians paid us to participate in the election. Right. Nobody died and fought for the right to. Where was Biden? When I was organizing in Madison, Florida, and white people came out and tried to kill me, where was Biden? When I was organizing in Alachua, Florida, and the sheriff wanted to put me in jail for bringing 11 people to register to vote. You know, so nobody to tell us that the Russians did this, you know, it's just an absurdity. And I think we want to bring all of that out, expose all of that, and
Bring
have
all
this
of that out.
discussion. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
So let me ask about the response from the public.
Let me say this before you
go
go there, Comrade. I think that we should also say something about what they like to talk about in terms of racism. What can be more racist? What is a bigger racist trope against Black people that somebody who they consider white has to tell us that we are oppressed? I mean, this is just the most, you know, and this is the Democratic Party that we're supposed to love so much in this instance that's leading this campaign. This is Joe Biden, who, by the way, was opposed to Negroes busing and integration and all that, and was on record for being opposed to that when he was in the Senate, who brought us the 1984 omnibus crime bill that's responsible for George Floyd and all these other people being killed, you know, et cetera. I mean, that's their record. I was just transparent.
Jim Crow Joe.
That's it.
Jim Crow Joe.
Jim Crow Joe. So, that's right. Yeah, that's really important for us, I think, for us to be able to show we're gonna take this campaign to the streets, to the people, every avenue, every venue that we can get. We're gonna tell the story, and then we want to put the United States government in this position of having to say, the hell with that. You know, we believe in democracy for everybody except Black people, or for white people only, which is the direction that the country is moving in right now.
Reaction to losing that, or at least that sense that they're losing.
Yes.
But yeah, I was going to ask about the response, right? So once this news got out, right, once people have seen the video and know that the Uhuru movement is under attack, the Solidarity movement is under attack, you know, what has been the response from the general public, both here in the United States and internationally? Mwezi, can you answer that?
Yes, and I can touch on that, and the chairman would like to add, but I do want to say that you know, at least for myself, but I think it could, you know, speak for many, that we were, you know, overwhelmingly surprised with the amount of support, because again, you know, even outside of the activist communities, people, you know, remember, right, the, you know, COINTEL tactics that crushed the revolution of the 1960s and had our leaders imprisoned and slandered, assassinated, you know, and, you know, how, you know, whatever, you name it. And so it was, you know, there was this piece of like, okay, this is not the first time, but I do think that we have one of the things that has, you know, aside from these interviews, like we had a few interviews with like Democracy Now! and you know, other press tours and things like that, you know, being able to even cross some of these political lines, you know, in terms of, you know, platforms and things like that. But what we have also seen is the, how this campaign has been able to engage in even the electoral, you know, process or campaign. We have a, you know, leaders, you know, one who was a lifetime member of the movement, Alderman Jesse Todd, who is the alderman of Ward 18 in St. Louis, Missouri, has, you know, helped, you know, has put forth this, you know, really phenomenal resolution, a sanctuary city resolution to, you know, because as we know, the, you know, local police and, you know, city government worked with the FBI to help, you know, facilitate these raids. And so this resolution that has been put forth by really, you know, a courageous stance by Alderman Jesse Todd is, you know, demanding that, you know, that these local governments don't, you know, do not work with, you know, with the, you know, federal government to attack, you know, organizations who are working, you know, and attack them on these charges stemming from, you know, organizations who are doing work to uplift and, you know, better their community. And another councilman in New York is also taking this on as well, Charles Barron. And so these are just some examples of how even outside of these activist communities, this campaign is doing that work. And you know, cultural workers, you know, we have, you know, there's, if people are on Instagram, they can go on, you know, look at Dead Prez, right? Who many people who don't know the chairman, but who remember his voice from listening to, you know, Wolves and, you know, Lick the Blade, and from Dead Prez's album, you know, have we are seeing even him, putting this out there and, saying hands off Uhuru. And internationally, without a doubt, African people understand that, and we have to continue to deepen this, because we have to, really deepen this. But you touch one of us, you touch all of us. And so that is a slogan that we say in the movement. And since the African People's Socialist Party is international, we are, building wherever we, building hands off, fronts, right, to wage this counterattack. So that's what I can say to that. Uhuru.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that is that there's been a leap in membership applications. Everybody can't get in, but a lot since the attack, and that's really interesting. Yeah. Because the thing was to isolate us and to frighten people. And I'm telling you, not just in the United States, but in Africa as well. People, they saw that and they said, this is why I want to join. And it's really extraordinary that people would come to us when these attacks happened in Caribbean. I want to join because because of the FBI raids. I saw the FBI raids. So that's important. And there are other things that we do all the time. Like the work that we do. One thing that did not get mentioned is that I was in the most opulent community I've ever been in my life, right here in St. Louis. I didn't even know communities like this existed as such. I've seen in the movies where you would see a house like this, but the whole neighborhood, the whole enclave, the wealth I have never seen. And these are people who do fundraising. And they do fundraising. They want to support one of the programs that we've got. And the person who did it said that we were just studying something about the counterintelligence program, and we saw this happen, and we understood, and that you did exactly what they said you're supposed to do, because you came out fighting, you came out with a press conference on the same day, calling attention to it, et cetera, et cetera. And these are people who want to participate in raising funds, and which is really important for us, because I think we had a $270,000 or more that we were trying to raise. And I think we raised $100 and some thousand right now, and with $100 and some odd $1,000 to raise, and people are contributing to that. People are moving. These are people we don't know in many instances. People who donate sometimes anonymously, want to make contributions to it. So it's been an extraordinary kind of response that we're getting, and people who in St. Petersburg, Florida. I went back not too long ago, first time I've been there since they invaded my house. I have a house in St. Petersburg, Florida. And, but, obviously, Ona and I, Deputy, are living in St. Louis. And so that they invaded the empty house. They knocked the doors in and things like that. And there are perhaps on that film, that video that was shown, they were, scores of them coming out of this empty house. They stole a lot of stuff, but I was asking people when they came out, did you get any videos? It was so funny, because there and in St. Louis, they said no, because we thought they was coming for us. So the police presence, this ubiquitous presence of armed state colonial forces in our communities is profound. And so I'm driving down the streets, and now, in this economically depressed community, where people do everything to survive, I pass by, I'm the OG now, you understand? So, so people, OG, they just added to my credits. And it's interesting because the FBI agent, when they were arresting us, when they were harassing us, handcuffing, it was bragging that this is going to be in the news. This is going to be in the news tomorrow. On October 31st, in October, we had begun the process of buying a church, a magnificent institution to add to the community work, going to put the Uhuru House there, create some of the institutions there. And that was something that was begun. We had, we had it under contract at one point, and they burned that. I think January 17th that burned down. On July 2nd, something like 25 days or 27 days before that attack on the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg, Florida,
somebody pulls up in broad daylight, open the trunk of a car and pull out of the trunk a military grade flamethrower. I mean, this is not your barbecue lighting, kind of thing, a flamethrower, and set a fire, torch the red, black, and green flag, a 15 by 25 foot flag standing on a 50-foot flagpole. This is like what they've done to try to isolate and terrify people, and people have moved closer in many instances to us, and like people are trying to join. We've got Commander Akile was just today reporting on the fact that she's organizing other people who do media work, Africans who do media work in St. Petersburg, Florida, to come stand with us in a press conference in opposition to this. We had a situation where we had been granted some $30,000 to improve our radio station in St. Petersburg, Florida. And that this was by an agency that had been contracted by the Pinellas County Commission to do this. And then they said out of, I forgot how many applications they had, that I was among the top 5 applications that they got. And so they had approved it, even after somebody said, well, you're going to do this, that they've been accused by the FBI and say they meet all the requirements, et cetera, to get the money. And then later on, they rescind the grant. They're going to take it back. And they said because we're anti-Semitic, because, I mean, it's came up with the most ridiculous kinds of things to take it back. And they don't give any examples for that, but they take it back from us. But even when they did that, we had a situation with a news article that we expected a hit job coming from the local newspaper there. And they start off by saying that they had taken this money from a Black community radio station in St. Petersburg, Florida, run by the Uhuru movement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they did extensive quotes about what it is that we do, coming from other people, what we provide for the African community. So this is the thing they're up against. This is not just a protest movement. It's an actual movement that's engaged in uplifting, developing our community, and creating what we call dual power, that the intent to negate the power and influence of the colonizer in our community. And that's the problem they have with us.
I see.
Yeah.
Uhuru indeed.
Yeah.
So I've got the, okay. I'm thinking about, the various sectors of the African nation, right? And we know that we have reactionary sectors. So have there been any response from reactionary sectors of the African nation, whether locally, internationally, any kind of interaction or support, or yay FBI, what's going on with some of those reactionary Black forces, if anything's happening?
Ma'am, Mwezi?
Uhuru, Chairman. And
Mwezi mentioned to you that Comrade Yeshitela took before the board this resolution. It's a resolution to declare St. Louis to be a city, a Dred Scott city of a sanctuary city of refuge for Black people. You know the history of Dred Scott. He comes to Missouri, thinks he can be free in Missouri, and in Missouri, in St. Louis, they busted him, and the feds busted him. The Supreme Court comes out with the famous declaration that Black people have no rights that the white man has to respect, and what have you. Right. And so we named it for Dred Scott, and we said that St. Louis has an opportunity to repudiate that history and all this other stuff. And so it is a great resolution, and it was read at one time. Before it had to go before the Public Safety Committee to get to the board. And this is something that is Zoomed. People can participate via Zoom. It was read at one time, and it's an impressive document. So an African woman took the leadership in saying that we need more information before we make a decision, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeshitela was just incredible, fighting tooth and nail for this. And but when the woman said that we want to bring the FBI and the chief of police to a public forum to explain this, we say, right on, have the public forum,
And so we're going to do that next week. Of course,
That's great.
next week, they hesitated. Next week, they postponed the date. And then when they did have it finally, they didn't have the FBI or the chief of police. They hadn't notified either of them because from their perspective, Yeshitela was supposed to do that, despite the fact that the chairman of that board had indicated that the clerk would get in touch with the chief of police and the FBI to have them there. Anyway, there was great discussion around the resolution, read the resolution again, discussed it. Yeshitela gave the whole history of African people and fight for democracy by Black people, etc. And there was a full house while this discussion was going on. But when it came time to vote, then they meandered out, most of them. So they didn't have a quorum. You understand? So they could vote, but they did not have a quorum for it. This was led, if they didn't lead it, the Africans played a big role in that. And they deserted, they ran from it because there was going to be a problem for them. If they went one way, the white man was going to be pissed. If they went the other way, Africans are going to be pissed. So they're not going to go either way, right? They're just not going to have a quorum so that they are not on record for voting for it. But the thing is that this had a big impact because we had invited the media there and the media wrote the story.
Okay.
You know, and this is what happened and what have you. And the same thing happened with the Pinellas County. They wrote the story. And this was an African woman. Was the one that they used in St. Petersburg, Florida. And they have a small cadre of Africans, right? This woman is on the county commission now. She has been on the school board. She has been on the city council. So they have a handful of these people. They circulate in these different roles and what have you. And she played a primary role. She's also the person who, when the question came up some years ago about that mural I tore down in 1966, and went to prison for, when there was a big discussion that came up about what should be on that mural and should my name be on. The woman said I was a criminal. I was a criminal for tearing the mural down, right?
Right.
So that those kinds of forces did materialize. Some of them have been intimidated, but we got people like Zaki Baruti from the Universal African Peoples Organization right on board. There are other local forces in the St. Louis right on board. There's a city council person out of St. Petersburg who is going to be there and stand with us in a press conference when we denounced the fact that they took that from us. And there are others, you know, who are doing that as well. So these are people from the community in many instances, and some of them are scared, you know, like, for example, well, I'm not going to tell, but some of them are scared and they're making an appearance, but they don't want to say anything. They just be there and stand with us and tremble. But that's all right, too. I mean, a trembling presence is better than no presence. Better than no presence.
That's right. That's right.
So, but yeah, it's been good. And that's the only negativism that I can point to that we've seen. Other people see me and they say, I saw you on TV. I really appreciate what you had to say. People in the community, when I drive by, they make it a point often to step out and wave or to stick up a fist and things like that. So, and I didn't mention to you, I meant to tell you about October 31st, because this is really important. We don't talk about this enough. On October 31st, some months after the July 29th attack, we had this Halloween event at our outdoor event space. And Comrade Timber Shabanda had been assigned to take down the materials, the decorations for the Halloween event. And sometime before noon, two cops apprehended him. I think they may have put him down on his knees and what have you, handcuffed him, put him in the police car and said that they were arresting him for making terroristic threats. And the terroristic threats he was supposed to have made was because he had been working as a part-time teacher. And they were going to hire him full-time, and then suddenly in the middle of everything, they took it back from him. So he doesn't know what's going on, right? They took it back. And so he's arguing with them about that. And then this is why they say that he was making terroristic threats. So they take him to jail.
They hold him in jail. He's there from 12 o'clock to almost close to 7 p.m. That he hasn't been processed, and he's watching people process, going back and forth, being processed all this time. Finally, 2 cops, one a Fed, he says, and the other local, he says, come in. And they say that, first of all, that these terroristic charges, this BS, we know that's BS, et cetera, but tell us about Russia. Because Timber had gone to Moscow with me, and they had rigged it to take his job from him and to bust him. And so they ended up dropping those. They held him for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And he's locked up. We can't get to him. The lawyer can't understand what the hell is happening. Why are they doing this? We're paying a lot of money, you know, like to deal with this case, and not knowing how to treat the case because these terroristic threats, and not immediately connecting this thing to the July 29th attack that they made on us. But it's all part and parcel of the same thing. Yeah. And Timber has an issue telling us everything because he's violated a protocol. And the protocol is if the FBI should arrest you or approach you, say nothing. Say nothing. Because even your body language, even your stuff that you tells them things, and if you lie to them, you've broken the law. You see, so say nothing. And Timber didn't say nothing. And so because he violated the protocol, then he didn't want to say what the hell had happened altogether. And so we were kept in the dark, you know, for a minute around that. But the thing is that we don't have anything to fear in terms of illegalities. We haven't broken any of their laws. We've been quite careful not to violate their law, because we understand that what they cannot tolerate is democracy. We fought and won this democratic space. Black people bled for this democratic space, and we're not going to sacrifice this democratic space like that. And what they would do, if they can, is they will push us in the corners and stuff like that, so that we will act prematurely, preemptively, and stuff like that, and find ourselves creating a situation that justifies, at least in public view, the attacks that they make on us. And we're not going to justify it, because what you've just attacked was the democracy that you say you believe in. Right. You said you believe in it, and I fought and bled for this democracy, and that's why you're attacking me. And that's the thing that we want to keep clear. So Timber violated the protocol by talking to them, but there's nothing that he can tell them that we did that was illegal that's associated with anything that they talk about. Nobody can, for that matter. Uhuru.
Right. Thank you, Chairman.
Hasn't reached that place, and people have misunderstood this in so many times that you know, we've seen what we call the anguished slave syndrome, the acronym for which is ASS, you know. And so just because you pissed off, you don't win because you pissed off. And we're not in this for the fight, we're in for the victory. And you know, you can't get carried away by your need to fight. What the hell? You know, the thing is, if
don't
you
fight to fight, you fight to win.
You fight to win. That's it.
To win.
Yeah,
absolutely. The you know, Sister Mwezi, you had mentioned you know, some support coming from across, you know, a political range, and and you mentioned you know, at least a couple of public officials, right, elected officials who have spoken in support, acting in support of the movement. Is there outreach to other progressive politicians or progressive elected officials? And really, I think I mean that more than politicians as such. You know, I forgive me, I can't remember her name. I know there was a socialist elected to, I think, the City Council of Seattle. Just other, you know, Black or otherwise, you know, progressive public officials, and again, whether in the states or internationally, who have come to the defense of the Uhuru movement.
Uhuru. Well, yes, and I would say that, well, one, this campaign has various, committees and, people and volunteers working on various fronts. And so we have a, public relations team that, this is part of our goal, is to make sure that we can get this out, as well as the other ways that we outreach to the, global community. But really, one thing that, so in terms of outreach, yes, anybody who can unite with just the basic principles of unity, even of this campaign, which you can find on our website, but this understanding that if you unite with the right of African people to advocate and organize, right, for the unification and liberation and, self-determination of African people, then, get on board. And, and we want to, like the chairman said, we want to use all the democratic space. So if anyone is hearing this right now and of a platform or somebody who, needs to hear this, or who has listeners who, who want to get involved, or who, are just sick of the US government and its attacks on the African liberation struggle, historically, currently, any of that, that's what, we are, yes. So I wouldn't say that and the chairman may be able to speak more to that, but I know we do also want to, connect and bridge with all liberation struggles. And so it's not just, what we have found, and the African People's Socialist Party has had a long history with, and the chairman has just shared how much he has traveled around the world, uniting, other, colonized peoples in this fight back. And so the invitation to fight to win is open for all.
I'm really self-critical now because even immediately after it happened, the organization December 12th out of New York, they held a big press conference there in support of the party and the movement. And there were politicians. One, the state senator was one that came out in support of us, and other, progressive forces and institutions stood by as well and have opened themselves up to support. So I think that's, that has happened, that has occurred. Surprisingly, there are some forces, particularly right here in St. Louis, who promote themselves as being these great progressives, and they're promoted as being real progressives, because they are opposed to the attack on Roe versus Wade and stuff like that, and they've had sit-down protests at the Supreme Court, et cetera. But we haven't heard from her yet. So, but we are reaching out, and we are going to be calling everybody to account. Because the thing is that, everybody, people are familiar with this history. Do you remember when they first started talking about this Black identity extremists? And
yes,
it was the congressional hearing. I forgot somebody from the feds approach. I don't remember if it was the head of the FBI, Homeland Security, or somebody. And this African woman, I was so proud of her, a congresswoman, who really challenged this designation and said, "We remember what you did with the whole COINTELPRO program." And so there is some historical memory with some of these people who are politicians and who are in office. There is a city council person in St. Petersburg, Florida, who did come out when this attack was made, and they questioned him about this, and he said that it was the Uhuru movement that gave him political life when he was backwards and didn't know anything, and who informed him. And when he was under attack by the government himself as a young person, it was the Uhuru movement that did that. So he couldn't, and all the things that we brought to this community, he was able to say that. So I think that's important, but we do need more of that. And I think we may not have enough people on staff in the committee to concentrate just on working that. I know it's been some discussion, and I don't remember if we talked much to Charles Barron about playing some role in that capacity, because he's been extraordinarily helpful, as has D12 out of New York, and other people that they are connected with.
Great. I know that you were interviewed on Democracy Now! That was shortly after the event, right? Have they reached out for an update or anything like that, or similar platforms? Have they reached out for updates?
Yeah, there've been, I don't know how many. I mean, it's almost every. And Mwezi would tell. I mean, almost. I'm just out there, and I don't know. Are you familiar with Rock Newman?
Yeah.
I think I've done one with him, and he did the first ever remote thing that he did it with me. He was very helpful and very good. And there's another brother, what's the brother's name? I did the second one with him just the other day, yesterday, I think it was. The brother, he has a series. He's on series. He's a professor as well.
You put me on the spot, Chairman. There has been a lot.
Was it not Wilmer something? I can't
Oh,
think
Wilmer Leon?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and so he's done two.
Great.
He's come back and said, let's do it again, and
Excellent.
what have you, so, and there have been so many, and that's really good. That's something that has been happening. We did one 15-minute interview, and I think within a day or so, they had, 90,000 views. The thing with Democracy Now! Has had, more than 200,000 views. I think the thing, we did one locally that you saw me speaking to an owner standing next to me when we were in front of the house. A local TV station did it, and it has maybe 700,000-800,000 views. And then we have something like scores of thousands of statements of support. And out of all of them, we see little, if any, opposition to us and support for what the FBI has done. We get this even from, I'm a white conservative, this is what they say, and that, this is ridiculous, I'm opposed to it, etc. So, and the other thing is, of course, part of the contradiction that you either inferred or spoke directly to early on is that the country, the social fabric of the United States is just riven. And there are even people who are considered conservatives and right-wingers who are talking about the weaponization of the FBI. And there are hearings of some sort happening now about how the FBI is being used as a political weapon, et cetera. This is part of the contradiction within which, we are engaged in this struggle as well. And as you know, the United States is busy prosecuting and putting people in jail and prison based on their certain kinds of political affiliations and things they've been involved in from the so-called right wing, et cetera, even though it's hard to make a distinction, increasingly hard to know what the right wing is distinguishable from the other wings,
I would say.
Yeah.
So yes, go ahead, Sister Mwezi.
Yes, Brother Yusuf, I would be remiss if I didn't even respond to your question by letting people know that they can find a lot of this too on our website. If you go to handsoffuhuru.org, you can find, we have a news tab where you'll see all, many of the interviews that have been, put out there, the Sanctuary City campaign, our news and analysis from the campaign itself, as well as our endorsers and events. And we do have an event on April 1st, an anti-repression, conference of sort. And this is the type of meeting.
Yeah, you gotta be there.
That's April 1st, you said.
April 1st, yes.
Okay.
If you, we'll have some registration information will be up. And so you just check on our handsoffuhuru.org/events. And I'll make sure that I put that in the chat at some point provide that.
Is there something happening this weekend, Saturday?
Yes, and this weekend, the Black is Back Coalition, they have a webinar called the FBI Attacks Because Black is Back. And this is looking at the history of FBI attacks on the Black Liberation Movement. And that's this Saturday at 11 Eastern.
Are you presenting on that, Comrade Yusuf?
I'm not.
Okay.
I have a doctor's appointment that I have to go to, so I won't be there. But it is this Saturday, and folks can catch it on Facebook if they can't be there.
Register on Zoom, and they can check the Facebook pages for more information that will direct them where to watch it as well. Yes.
Great.
And I wanted to mention in terms of internationally, especially in the African community, because we are located in some French-speaking countries and in France itself, and as well as some French-speaking countries in Africa and the Caribbean. And Comrade Akile just did an amazing radio interview with Mobali Makasi, which is a French language radio station that's located in Paris. It has thousands of listeners stretched across the African world, French-speaking listeners. And And they've said they said that this is your radio station. If you have to call us up any moment and anything we're doing, we'll put you on, for a few minutes if necessary, but this is your station. So yeah, so that's, part of the outreach as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right. And again, global action, right? It's a global fight, global action.
And they're Garveyites too, you see.
There you go. So I really, I have one final question, right, for both of you, and you've really started answering it, so you can just add on. And the question is, what else can the community do to support the Uhuru movement? I'm so happy to hear, right, that applications to join the party have ballooned, because clearly, right, this is a backfire on whatever they might have expected. So that's certainly one thing people can do, right? Is get involved with the movement. But what else can folks do to support the defense of the Uhuru movement?
Uhuru. Yes. So the word defense, and we look at the legal defense, they can donate by going to handsoffuhuru.org/donate. In order to secure our legal representation, we need to raise $277,500, and this is just for the 4 quote-unquote unindicted co-conspirators, and we are 120,000 away from our goal. And this is, this has been done by the people, by small, large donations, however it has come in. And so really, follow the campaign. You can come to our mass meetings, all of this information on our website. This is how you can stay connected. You can volunteer. We have a petition that also, has been circulating and continues to get signatures. There's some online and some are on paper all around, and that petition is in English and in French. So it's so we want to get all that out. People can hold a fundraiser if you're on an event, and if you're students. I know, Joko Collective, speaks to, as the chairman has said, working class intellectuals. And if you want to be able to, continue, invite the chairman and other speakers of the movement to come to your community and to be able to speak and to share what happened, and help us raise resources and sign up for the emergency response. This can be done on the website. We want to be able to mobilize should indictments come down, that if they lay a finger on any of our leaders, that they will have to respond to the people wherever we are. And so go to handsoffuhuru.org, sign the emergency response. You can do that on the homepage. And that website will help to kind of guide you on where you should be. But come to our meetings. I think that's the place where we get to, be as a people and put this out there. And those serve as fundraisers as well. So, bring a friend. Uhuru.
Right on.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Chairman?
I just want to, I was reluctant to make this statement because I didn't want to give the appearance of sucking up. But I truly respect what I think is the intellectual integrity of the Joko Collective.
Thank you.
And it's not even to say that we agree on everything, because I don't know if that's true or not. We may agree on everything, great minds do think about it.
Quite often.
But I really, truly appreciate and I'm saying this because I'm in the company of opportunists and hustlers all the time. And sometimes you see me in that company and don't necessarily recognize looking at it. But I am convinced that theory is a critical thing. It truly is the thing that ultimately keeps us honest and on point. There has to be a to what end. If there is no to what end, then everything is important. That's what opportunism. You sacrifice the long-term interests of the people of the revolution, like for these short-term goals that satisfies, particular sector of the community. And there are hustlers who can say what we say, aspects of what we say, but we also recognize that Marx was right when he said that philosophers have only interpreted the world. The thing is to change the world, right? And that's the thing. And if your philosophy is not one that is informing transformation. We say we're African internationalists, and it is a philosophy of practice, you know, so that's a distinguishing thing. So even if you're a really smart person, and what you have to say is not something that is designed to change stuff, you don't necessarily come up with smart answers. You come up with these pristine answers that have no relationship to the practical life of the people, and that won't serve us in the final analysis. So that's what I'm talking about. I just want to express my appreciation. I've heard you on different occasions, and I've met Comrade Tasha, who won't show her face, you know, and we just want to, you know, I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much for giving us this platform, this opportunity to have this discussion. And at some time we need to talk some more just about the stuff I just mentioned.
Yeah, we will
Absolutely.
definitely have you back. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our heartfelt thanks for that compliment and acknowledgement, Chairman.
Oh, yes.
Could not come
we love
from
you.
a more could not come from a more edifying source. Thank you so much.
Thank you, comrades. Uhuru. Yes.
Makes you feel like you're doing something right, huh, Tasha?
You are, man.
Right on, because we be saying, oh, this is a little bit of a struggle. We looking kind of weenie. I don't know. What are we doing here?
Right on.
But we're moving forward.
Yes, right on.
We're winning. That's the
we're winning, exactly. And we are winning. That's right. And the instability demonstrates it.
Yes, it demonstrates it. And they, you know, I believe they killed Garvey. Of course, you know, that they arrested him and they've killed Malcolm. They've assassinated people like Lumumba, and I believe in Nkrumah, a whole host of people. They've done it. But it ain't over. The fat lady has not yet made an appearance, right? And so we are winning.
Yeah, it was just revealed that Pablo Neruda was poisoned, not prostate cancer, as they said, but poisoned.
Yes.
Right? So
yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, comrades. So
we have reached that point. We've reached the point where we're going to bring James in, right? To add his commentary. So and particularly around this HR bill, what is it? The malign Russian activities in Africa Act thing.
Countering malign Russian activities in Africa, right?
So, but before we go directly to that, right? So you heard the chairman, Sister Mwezi. Are there some other stakes, you know, some things in the details that might be overlooked that a legal mind would be attuned to?
I don't know if there's anything in particular. One of the things I was thinking about the chairman and then Mwezi was speaking is like, what am I going to talk about? Because you've already talked about half of what I was going to talk about. But to have such an act, and I read it, and it's just as vague, that about no matter what you do, you can be in violation of the act. And in terms of the examples, like we talked about some, like, you know, these assassinations, and, you know, the assassinations of Patrice Lumumba, Amilcar Cabral, Maurice Bishop, Malcolm X, Eduardo Mondlane, Chris Hani, Muammar Gaddafi, Steve Biko, and so many others. It's like, even if they weren't directly assassinated by the United States set up situations, provided support, political and material support for these assassinations to take place. And both on the international and a national level. So what is there to be aware of? It's jaywalking tickets, you know, being careful to have your taxes together. So when you have HR 7311, it's the same thing. If you're going to reach out to and try to disconnect imperialism from Africa, it's going to be a problem, whether it's Russian or not, whether it's Chinese or not, whether it's Cuban or not. I mean, Cuba has been like bore the brunt of U.S. imperialism for decades, over half a century at this point, and they didn't need a specific act, but a specific act can facilitate what they do. So it's, you know, I think Mwezi mentioned COINTELPRO, and you know, COINTELPRO is like old news, but the spirit of COINTELPRO still exists. The spirit of COINTELPRO has manifested itself with the Patriot Act, with this bill, and trying to function like, you know, decades ago, we're trying to get information on from liberation movements in Southern Africa, and then having to deal with, yeah, but the ANC is a terrorist organization, or the PAC is a terrorist organization. And I said, well, what do you want us to do? How can we function if we're constantly looking around trying to figure out what's legal and what is not? And the less obvious legal stakes is like in trying to tiptoe around one thing, we might step on a landmine over here. So it's insidious process, but it's one that's been around for, you know, ever since we've been here.
Yeah.
So
may I
go ahead.
I would like for everybody, if you should, you may be familiar with the Munich Security Council meetings. They happen annually, and they are attended by heads of state and other people who are in government, like different ministers, et cetera, and really important people like Zuckerberg and et cetera. And you should Google the Munich Security Council, and particularly the one in 2020, because we heard about this white person who murdered all these people in Buffalo. And they talk about how, you know, he's been somehow influenced by this replacement theory. And they act like this is some kind of outlier assumption. But the thing about the 2020 Munich Security Council is a primary thing that they were discussing. And it was attended by, I'm trying to remember which person from the United States government. He was in the administration, in the executive branch of the US government. But they were worrying about the how did they characterize it? The West, how like, you've heard me talk about this before, Mwezi, westlessness.
Oh, okay.
They're approaching westlessness. This was a real concern that they were dealing with. And that is to say, which is that this was something that the West, as a power, as an influence in the world, that westlessness was like something that was possibly on the horizon. And which is more or less the thing about the replacement theory being spoken of. Like I said, Zuckerberg was there. This was a high fashion, real big kind of issue at the Munich Security Council. They have it annually. And I just saw something, I think, that says that maybe Xi from China is going to be at this one that's coming up, or that. But Google that, and I think you'll find it extraordinarily interesting, because this is not an outlier thing, that there is a sense that's deep within the perception and consciousness, and sometimes based on data that they're looking at, by the losing ground that the colonial powers, colonialism is having. And because when they talked about Westlessness, I saw something that's saying that they're not, when they include Australia, you know, I mean, they're including these places where Europeans, white people, are dominant forces in the world when they're talking about the West. So they're not just talking about, you know, just about, you know, where things are located geographically. It's political and economic configuration of the world that they're looking at. And that's something that's been dominated by the colonial powers. That's why we talk about a colonial mode of production. And people who like study Marx and everything understand that Marx had these assumptions about modes of production that talked about capitalism, but there was this very mysterious thing. If anybody who has looked at Marx and studied Marx, about how he understood this vertical development of human society, not of European society, but of human society, and how he moves human society from this place of feudalism to capitalism. It's a very mysterious process, and that he says happens as a consequence of what he called the primitive accumulation of capital, which meant the turning of Africa into a warren for the commercial hunting of black skins. It meant what they were doing to East India, that is to India itself, to the Americas, et cetera, which is the colonialism. And he said that this has the same implications in political science as original sin in theology. This is where it started. And this is the missing link, this colonial mode of production. He wanted to move from feudalism, which was a European phenomenon, more or less. I mean, I know there have been some stuff that's tried to extend it to be, but they were talking about a feudal, a European phenomenon that was based primarily in Europe. But now, what was it that pulled the entire world together in a single economy? And the thing that pulled the world together into a single global economy was colonial slavery, first of all, then it expanded to the colonial domination of the world. And that's the stuff that everybody in the world has been trying to escape from since that time. And even white people who somehow see themselves on a separate trajectory on the planet than the rest of us are trapped in this colonial mode of production. It is parasitic in its relation, and promotes and generates parasitic relationships throughout the entire process. And that's really important. That's stuff that we need to keep on talking about. And you, comrades, and Joko Collective can help me learn how to write about this better. But I think that's really important for us to understand. Anyway, thank you so much, Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Yeah.
Well, that makes me again continue to think about this countering malign activities. Right?
Yes.
Exactly. So what is the plan here, right? What is this law supposed to be trying to prevent, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, basically it's trying to guard against supposedly the influence of Russia in the affairs of African nations, which is, again, very, when the US and the so-called West has been interfering with African nations to the point of genocide. The West has been interfering with the Congo, where millions of people have died in the 19th century, 20th century, now the 21st century. Millions of people have died, but because the access to natural resources is at stake, access to military bases is at stake. They don't want this so-called malign Russian activity in Africa. Well, you know, who could be more maligned than those who supported the assassination of all these folks and continued colonialism after colonialism was clearly dead by Portugal, England, and the rest of them, or so-called Great Britain. So the thing is to safeguard Western interest in Africa. it seems, I thought it was going to be a little more
Sophisticated.
sophisticated, and it's not. Well, you said it, comrade. It's like, wow, this is it. But that's why I said it's so vague, and so it can apply to damn near anything.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, kind of remind me. Now, one of the things we talked about was similar situations
Yeah,
that have
I was
occurred in the
gonna,
past.
yes, exactly. Similar laws, repressive laws. Right?
Yeah, and it's not, again, not just laws, but policies and acts.
Mhm.
And the tar baby memo. It's like, what? How are we going to deal with these people who are trying to free themselves? We don't have to worry about them. Let's continue to support the Portuguese and the so-called Rhodesians and the so-called South Africans, and let's continue to engage in torture and assassination and a war against the legitimate aspirations for self-determination in Southern Africa. When we one of the things that was the McCarran-Walter Act, it's like, oh, this is, who the hell is thinking about the McCarran-Walter Act? But the LA8, 7 Palestinians and a Kenyan, 20 years fighting a case, 20 years from 1987 to 2007, because they were passing out magazines from the PFLP, the Palestinian
Popular Front.
the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. There you go. And snatched them up, jerked them out of schools, disrupted their lives, tried to deport them, and eventually had to dismiss the case. But after 20 years.
Right.
Where was this? Who was this?
This is Los Angeles. There was 7 Palestinians and a Kenyan. The Los Angeles 8. So Section 241 of the McCarran-Walter Act makes it a deportable offense to be a member or affiliate of an organization which distributes literature advocating the economic, international, and governmental doctrines of world communism, or the establishment of a totalitarian dictatorship through any written or printed publications. So because they received magazines, the PFLP, that was enough to trigger this law. They were snatching people out of school while they were taking finals. The FBI rented an apartment and installed listening devices between one of the Palestinians and Sister Julie Mungai, who was, they were married. But they put spike mics through the wall so they could listen to what they were doing in their bedroom. FBI. And tore people apart. But again, one of these vague, what the hell? The PFLP this is world communism?
Right.
No, they're trying to liberate Palestine. You act like are they Russian puppets or Soviet puppets? But the so-called Black identity extremist campaign, it's like, what does that even mean? Who advocates that? I mean, really, what kind of danger is that? Even back in the day, people associating with the New Jewel movement. You had one of the most reactionary people, Manuel Noriega, working for the CIA, and still they invade his country. And I remember someone from the State Department was like, how is some assistant U.S. attorney going to set U.S. foreign policy? Because of his drug trafficking was excused by the U.S. government. And when he was going to trial, he said, I want to talk about my relationship with the CIA and the security functions for the United States. And they shut him up till he died.
They did.
So,
Right.
yeah,
He
so
never got to testify.
So all these things, it's like again, not just the act itself, but the policies and how they enforce whatever they want, even the Nation of Islam. And upset because he had relations with Gaddafi, upset because he was importing fish from Peru. It's like, why is Peru questioning, why is Peru selling fish to the Nation of Islam? They saw it as some kind of threat. That fish with all the bones in it.
The whiting.
The whiting.
Exactly.
I mean, how many bones did you pull out of a piece of you can pull out of a piece of whiting? But the thing is, any step is going to be a problem if it goes against their interest. And besides, you mentioned, I think Chairman mentioned Marcus Garvey, Paul Robeson, but Josephine Baker, and others.
Aretha Franklin.
Aretha Franklin. What's the sister's name? Catwoman.
Oh yeah,
Eartha Kitt.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so many others. It's like they don't need a particular act.
That's pretty good. That was a pretty good invitation.
That was.
Thank you very much. But it's this kind of act facilitates that, and it puts a name to it. So when it happens, it's like, hey, we're not just going after these people like COINTELPRO. We have an act, and they violated the act.
Yeah.
They violated the McCarran Act.
Yeah.
They violated the Countering Benign Influences in Africa Act. So it's there's so many other examples. So we could go all night on examples. But the thing is, the act is a part of a policy. And the policy is to keep, they want you to keep hands off Africa. You Africans, keep your hands out of Africa.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's really important. Go ahead.
Well, I was going, and maybe you can speak to this.
Yeah.
The significance of the author of this law. Isn't that a Black congressperson from New York?
Meeks.
Gregory
Meeks. Yeah.
What makes this significance, right? That a Black lawmaker writes this law.
What is the significance in the fact that the first time in 240 years, 40 some odd year history, that the Marine Corps would give an African a 4th star, make him a 4-star general, and put him in charge of AFRICOM? What is the significance that for the first time in history, a former African general has been made head of the Department of Defense? What is the significance, not only that Meeks did this around that particular act, but he was with Feinstein when she took that trip to Taiwan. He was on the plane with Feinstein, and where China has already said, this is a serious issue for you to come here. And all of it's connected, all of it, everything that I just mentioned is connected and given an opportunity, because see, it's very difficult to be very problematic for the United States to engage Russia in a confrontation directly. So it's not fighting Russia directly. So it would have the Ukrainians make that fight. And so if they can create a similar situation with Taiwan, create antagonisms there to push China into moving with Taiwan, because Taiwan is China. It has always been China. It's China. And they changed the name just like they made a new president for Venezuela. They picked the president. They now made China, Taiwan, this independent thing that they are going to protect. And they create these contradictions that are designed, it seems, to provoke China into moving in a certain way. And then they want to arm Taiwan to the teeth. And so that it can be this engagement between China and Taiwan, be Russia and Ukraine, it appears to be, when these are wars, proxy wars being pushed out there to weaken China and Russia, and not just in terms of their own immediate circumstances, but in terms of the whole world and how they are viewed, and challenging the developing political configuration, like that's happening in the world. I think that's part of what it is that we're looking at. And Meeks was there. And Meeks is an African, and Meeks contributes to the ability of it camouflages the U.S. For people who can't see better. In fact, it's really interesting because the FBI integrated itself. The first person, and this is what some Negroes call progress integration, right? And it integrated into the FBI. And because the FBI needed an African that it could put in the Garvey movement to spy on and help to destroy Garvey. And this is part of what we're looking at right now. And this is part of what we're going to have to learn how to explain. And this is why I think that such a formation as yours is so important, because one of the things that we're confronted with, I'm reminded of a statement that's attributed to Harriet Tubman, who said, who's supposed to have said that I freed X numbers of people from slavery, and I could have freed a lot more if they only knew they were slaves. And what we are confronted with is African people know that we are oppressed, but they can't see a way to fight against this oppression outside of the existing system. So any solution that comes to them is somehow to improve your situation in the system, not to find a way to break from the system, which is responsible for the contradiction. And that's where we have to help people understand that there is another way, that you don't, the world, that the earth is round, and that it circumnavigates the sun, and not the other way around, except help people to really understand this. This is an important task, because we have a lot of Black militants, people who are serious and want to fight, but they don't know what they're fighting for, what fighting means, because the solution they look for is one that's offered up by the system itself. So the colonizers teaches you how to fight colonialism. But they don't call it colonialism, they call it racism. And what is fighting against racism except to make white people like you, to become more like white people so that you can be accepted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but not to chart your own course, to be in charge of your own affairs. That's the task for us, so that the people who are enslaved can understand that they are enslaved, that somebody has expropriated your capacity for self-determination, for knowing that you're going to have a future because you are in control of that future, not some other force, that you're constantly begging and pleading and asking to wear body cameras and other kinds of things so that they can have a good record of the latest murder. And I want to remind people, you remember, I think it was 1966. I think it was Comrade James talked about, the murder and mayhem, but I think it was 1966. That the CIA was involved in the murder of something like 3 million people in Indonesia who, wanted to be free. 3 million people. Did you just heard some scam that they were talking about the U.S. Senate or the U.S. one of the House passing some bill about the scourges of socialism and how many people have died as a consequence of that? They don't account the Atlantic slave trade. They don't account all the stuff that's happened, the disappearance of the indigenous people, the concentration camps people live on, the lifespan that has been stolen, from them, from us and other people, 3 million people. That's just 50 million people in India. They're killed by the British. You understand? This is what we are talking about.
Yeah.
You see, and so we have to help people understand and regain self-confidence. We have to give examples to people of your capacity. And that's one of the reasons that sometimes the significance of some exaggerations we often hear from Black nationalists and what have you, that you can be free, that people need to know history, not because of something, that because we need to know what happened back then, just on some way to make you feel good, because if you know what you have done, then you have an ability to know what you can do. And this is really important for us. People can be free. Black people, Black man, Black woman, you can be free. And there's nothing, as Ho Chi Minh said, more precious than freedom and independence. Nothing more precious than freedom and independence. So anyway, per usual, you've given me a soapbox.
It's all right, Chairman. Tasha, you have something you want to share, right?
Please, Tasha. Yes.
Yes. I'm enjoying reading aloud this evening. And so this little as James said, this little unsophisticated and puny bill, this little 8-page act, just a section that grabs me, right? Catches my attention. So they are, organizing themselves to be responsible starting 6 months after the adoption of this act, right? To begin to do an annual report for 5 years, an annual report on these malign activities as they had outlined previously in the document, right? But just this section talking about the the elements and the scope, right? Who this is supposed to refer to and what it's supposed to cover. Okay, so the report required by paragraph 1 shall include the following: an assessment of the scope and nature of the Russian Federation's malign influence and activities and related diplomatic, economic, and security priorities and strategic objectives in Africa, including influence and activities that involve Russian proxies, such as Russian oligarchs, Russian-funded private military contractors, and other individuals and entities directly or indirectly employed by or financially or politically associated with Russia and its officials, who are involved in or aid activities too, among other things. And here's the part: manipulate African governments and their policies, as well as the public opinions and voting preferences of African populations and diaspora groups, including those in the United States. And invest in, engage, or otherwise control strategic sectors in Africa, such as mining and other forms of natural resource extraction and exploitation, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
All of that really just to say, the public opinion and voting preferences of African populations and diaspora groups. Anyway, that's all.
Yeah.
So it's illegal for African countries to act with some kind of sovereignty and in their own interests.
Absolutely. To think, to play with any ideas not in the US sandbox, then you are at the risk of countering their influence. And I think it's very interesting that it goes so specifically into the realm of thought crimes, into the realm of these issues of influence, questions of influence. Right.
Yeah, I'm reminded of something. This is a Henry Kissinger, and maybe he was talking about Chile. They didn't know what to do with the democracy, right? Because they elected the wrong person, right? It's only democratic, right? When you elect who they approve of.
That's it.
I mean, it's that simple.
Keep your black hands off Africa. Africans need to keep your black hands off of Africa.
Off of Africa. Africans in Africa, right? Keep your black hands off Africa. I mean, it's just
Africans in Africa, Africans over here on the other side of the world. In the diaspora.
I would like to.
Yes, go ahead, Chairman.
To get an opportunity, there's a book, I think it's called The History of the British Empire. It's a relatively new book. I think you should look at that, and especially, when you look at some of the contradictions that we are aware of now, and a big contradiction that the so-called West has had to deal with for a long time, because actually England established much of the international, what has become international law. I mean, a lot of it has its origin in England, and you know about some of the old British philosophers and stuff who debated these critical questions having to do with government, and we get thrown at us all the time when I was younger and in school. But the thing is that they were struck with problem was the emergence of what has come to be known, some of us refer as bourgeois democracy or democratic imperialism or something of that character. And they like to talk about rule of law. And this whole issue of the rule of law, of course, is such because the people, these philosophers who are grappling with these questions, moving from feudalism, when divine right of kings, there was no, there wasn't a rule of law. It was what King so-and-so, said. And so this was a big democratic leap for Europe. And, but they were confronted with this question of how can you talk about all of this democracy and rule of law on the one hand for yourself? This is the British, had to grapple with this. While you are beheading and brutalizing and massacring Africans and people in India, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where a certain kind of concept of legal exceptionalism was born. And this legal exceptionalism had to do with the fact that democracy is theirs for everybody who is civilized. And the responsibility of England, Great Britain, was to civilize people so that this democracy would be applicable to them too. But they could use any means necessary to bring them into civilization. And this is, where you hear Rudyard Kipling, the whole issue of the white man's burden. We don't like killing you and doing all this stuff for you. It's the Americans, who had to bomb Vietnam to save it, bomb the village to save it and what have you. And so this was a real issue that they've grappled with. That's why you can have freedom on the one hand, but there's an exception. I think, what is it, the movie, the book, Catch-22?
Yeah, there it is. Yes.
There's an exception. So slavery is illegal now, except
Except, right?
So by another name is what we're looking at, and that's what we see all down the line. The fact of the matter is that our struggle is a political struggle, and the oppressors have created laws that justifies the political oppression, economic exploitation of Africans and the peoples around the world. That's the law, and I think that it has to be fought politically as well. And that's why that's really important. People have to be galvanized and have to come to understand what the hell is happening to us, and the fact that that especially Africans, especially colonized, who've lost like self-confidence, the ability to believe that we have a right to be free, to set our own terms, that the white man has said this and laid out this foundation, but that's his foundation, that's his saying, and that we have a right and responsibility to thrust ourselves into history and to take control of a narrative that suits our interests as a people. This is the task before us. And anyway, I just think it's really important for us to understand this, because there was no such thing as the white man. This is a recent invention. There was no such thing as Europe. Up until the 16th century, there was no such thing as Europe. What brought the white man in Europe into existence was slavery. You got a little tiny non-essential Portugal, and Prince Henry the Navigator, who strikes out from Portugal, a starving Europe, where in 1328 things were so bad in the 1300s that in London, England, that people were even eating their own children. This is a literal truth.
Yeah, this is.
And then they remember what? What did they remember that helped them to set off on this task that people romanticize about trying to find this greater place in the world and whether the world was round and all this stuff? They remember Mansa Musa. They remember this legend of this black man coming from Mali, 6,000 people with him traveling, from Mali, going to Mecca and what have you, throwing gold around all over the damn place and what have you, that it actually destroyed economies in some place there was so much gold. And so now you got England where people eating their babies and what have you, think there's a better way. Find out where the hell that gold is coming from.
Let's go get that gold.
That was the curiosity. That was the intellectual itch they had, where to get that gold. And they knew it was somewhere in Africa. And so all this is on the coast and circumnavigating around Africa and what have you was to find that damn gold.
That's the thing that led them to attack our Africa. That's why there's sugar on tables around the world today, because Portugal started this sugar plantations off the coast of Africa. This is why I can go to a place right now in the middle of snow possibilities in St. Louis and buy peaches in the supermarket, because they control the whole world, and where peaches is warm someplace where peaches can grow. This is the reality that we're looking at. They control a world economy, and we got to bust out of this thing because it's parasitic. And that peach is, somebody in South America is not eating a damn peach.
Right.
Because when they took them to South America, they were green. When they picked them in South America, they were green and inedible. And so then they send them to places for the colonizers, and they grace the tables and things like that for the colonizers. And many of the colonizers, because we live in food deserts.
Right, exactly right. So it's reaching certain places in the global north. Sister Asada, do you have a question?
Or an observation, because y'all much smarter than us. And if I know if it's a sister, it's true.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking about looking at the international, looking at it from an international perspective. You know, we're dealing with a lot of things locally, you know, that of course impact internationally. So at a local level, you know, how do you see us being most effective in terms of addressing the global situation? I mean, because, you know, we got the same thing, you know, the folks that sell us out, the folks that don't speak on behalf of the community. And, you know, it's like worldwide, what's happening with our communities, you know, is that, you know, just being under constant attack.
I think that's important. And I think that Joko, you're going to go ahead, Mwezi. Let me back up. You were about to say something?
I was gonna just mention and just reference the 14-point platform of the African People's Socialist Party, and point number 13. That I don't know. I think that one really spoke to me, and I was gonna read it and then just open it up, Chairman. But I don't know.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Uhuru, because I want to appreciate that question from Sister Asada, and this is one that I think helps us to contextualize the local to this overall, you know, global system of colonialism and what is required of us, you know, in terms of what the chairman will definitely add. But it says, we want an end to U.S. colonial domination of African people within the U.S. We believe that the primary struggle of African people within the U.S. and, you know, elsewhere during this period is to throw off the alien U.S. colonial domination, which is responsible for virtually every hardship imposed on Black people by this government that is an identifiable, you know, or identifiable as a quote unquote Black problem. We believe that our problems with education, from our inability to control our own schools and determine the education of our children, to the inferior and racist quality of the education that we do receive, are caused by colonialism. We believe that our problems with healthcare, from the absence of Black controlled and operated health clinics and institutions throughout our communities, to the hazardous health conditions imposed on us by poverty and callous government decisions, are caused by colonialism. We believe that our problems with housing, from the unavailability of decent and adequate housing for the majority of our people, to the dilapidated and vermin-infested housing that we are forced to live in, are caused by colonialism. We believe that our problems with food and clothing, from the terrible quality and quantity which are imposed on us by blood-sucking merchants, to our inability to produce and distribute them for and amongst ourselves, are caused by colonialism, where our whole people is dominated and oppressed by a foreign and alien state power for the purpose of economic exploitation and political advantage, and that is the state. So I just wanted to bring that into this discussion.
Uhuru. I think that's important too, Comrade Asada, because this point about colonialism being dominated by foreign and alien power, sometimes because we live in the same geographical space that the colonizer lives in, that we don't see them as foreigners, but we do.
I mean, in many ways, we articulate them about them as foreigners, but we don't see them as a foreign power that's dominating us. And that's a critical kind of question. And I was going to say that also, I think that the work that Joko does is critical because we have to provide political education to masses of our people. It's not good enough for us just to have these discussions and forums that only we participate in. We got to be in these communities, and we got to take political education to the masses of people so that people can come to a better understanding. And I also, I know that part of how that has to be done is like we've created what we call in St. Louis in particular. It's not the only place where we do this kind of work, but it's called a Black Power Blueprint. And the objective is to begin to build where we are locally, build where we are, build economic infrastructure, to build a capacity to negate the colonial influences in our community, bring people together for the purpose of collectively solving these kinds of problems. The community meetings that we have, and they're not held well. I'm going to be right up front with you, but the objective is to bring people into these community meetings on a regular basis. We do them on Sundays. Right after giving people time to go to church and give the preacher all their money and stuff like that and get back, because this is a day that people are accustomed to doing this kind of stuff, but bring people together where we have community meetings, and an objective is to give political education, bring people together, and also to allow people to bring their issues to the community. Mm-hmm. So this begins to function, the objective is for this to begin to function as a self-governing kind of process that people can deal with. And one of the things that we had initiated, something like, I think 2 days, we were planning it 2 days before the attack on us, was a Black Community Convention in St. Louis, which is really important. And, there was a statement that had been written to pull everybody together and to have this meeting in the African community. We say if we get 75, 100 people there, that's going to be a great meeting. And then we vote on this as the main resolution. Then we break off into different workshops where we deal with questions of education, public safety, crime, police, we deal with questions of politics, we deal with questions of economics, and then we have these discussions, and we would play an important role in these discussions, all these workshops, and then we will leave these breakout sessions and workshops, and we come back together, and the whole community vote on this, and it becomes our agenda for St. Louis, dealing with all the issues Comrade Asada that I think inferred, like in what you just raised. So this is the community coming together, saying these are the problems we got. This is how we define it. This is where we see we have to do collectively. And everybody in the community, so many people got these economic ideas they want to do, but they over there in a corner by themselves. It becomes a community project now, the way we are dealing with it. And so that's part of what it is, to bring the people into the process. And the other thing is that cannot be liquidated in our view, even though we're talking about a local thing, is a recognition that we are participating with Africans in other places around the world in carrying out this mission. So we're doing this in St. Louis, but you should see the work that we're doing in South Africa. You don't see us like with the EFF or something like that where we make CNN, but these are in the townships. We're located in the townships, and taking this politic and organizing people around questions. We're in Namibia, and I love. I have my own relationship with Namibia. I met with Sam Nujoma, who is considered like the founding father of what Namibia and what have you. And I've met with the prime minister and other people, throughout, Namibia. We are in Namibia. We are in, Tanzania. We are in Nigeria. We're in Ghana. We're in Sierra Leone and various other places like that. So, and trying to carry out the same kind of work everywhere. We've created, for example, Black Ankh process. This comes from the All African Peoples Development Empowerment Project.
it has created a black ankh. Our black ankh is our response to the Red Cross. The Red Cross, as you know, gets heaps and heaps of money. They got billions of dollars off the Haitian earthquake. And I think they may have created 6 houses that were worthless at that. So we need a capacity. Houston, remember the flood in Houston? We had people who lived in Houston who were trapped in the floods and couldn't have any access to help, etc. We need to be able to do something about that. We need to train Black people in our own communities, like the brother, there was that young basketball player who got hit in the heart and fell out, and somebody quickly gave that person, yeah, people need to know how to do that kind of stuff in our communities. And so, like the Red Cross is everywhere, the black ankh needs to be everywhere. And we came up with that because I was in Berlin, Germany, years and years ago, not too long after Katrina. And a brother who's born in the Caribbean, French-speaking Caribbean, living in France, who said, he just made the point that we need to have a black ankh because he was disgusted by what he saw happening to Black people in Louisiana. Why the hell can't we respond to ourselves? Why do we have to rely and wait for them? This is the process of initiating self-government that we have to engage in. So, Sister Sada, on all of these different levels, you know, that's what we think we have to do. And we do this also with relationship with the Mexicans and with Palestinians. The first message that we got after the thing in St. Louis, when they killed Mike Brown and all the tear gas and all this stuff, the Palestinians sent messages. This is how you deal with tear gas. This is how you have to do it. Solidarity. Iranians, parliament, criticize the United States. The Russian parliament. We have to have relationships with all these people around the world when we're looking at what's supposed to be a local issue, because the reality is that in these what appears to be local or specific kinds of contradiction, there's a universal contradiction that's located inside of it, and we got to help people see that and fight from that perspective. And I know you're tired of me, Sister Asada, so I'm going to shut up.
No. I'm appreciating everything that you're saying. You know what I mean? And really just like totally in alignment with what you're saying is that we do have to make that connection, and we do have to put it in perspective so that people understand, the importance of us, connecting with not just other communities, but in this country, but throughout the world. So yeah, I appreciate everything that you and Sister, what's the sister's name?
Mwezi.
Sister Mwezi, I appreciate everything that's been said. Matter of fact, I appreciate the entire talk tonight. It's been very inspirational, and I'm just 100% online with everything that's been said.
Oh, thank you so much, Sister.
Thank you, Sister Asada. We're coming to the close of the evening, but I have one more question for James. And I know James, in your work and workshops I've attended with you, particularly around supporting political prisoners, right? And you talk about being careful about the type of language we use when we're writing letters to prisoners. Mm-hmm. Are there similar rules that folks should keep in mind in terms of their support for the Uhuru movement, particularly in this struggle right in front of us?
Yeah, some of those same rules I think follow, and I think even the chairman mentioned one. It's like, don't get emotional. Don't start talking in threatening language. Don't cause this movement to keep the hands off Uhuru to be associated with violence, mm-hmm. Or unlawfulness. Mm-hmm. In the past, when I dealt with, it was the young white anarchist who was accused of trying to bomb Hitler's birthday party. And people kept jumping up in the courtroom and acting a fool. And it's like, y'all, do you want to get him? Do you want to express yourself and feel better that you showed them? Or do you want to get this dude out of jail and not go to prison? Mm-hmm. And when it was explained to them, even though they were anarchists, they got the drift.
Yeah.
to be disciplined. At one time, the sheriff's called and said, we heard, because they had been acting up, but before I got on the case, but they said, we heard that they were going to rush the courthouse. I said, they are not going to rush the courthouse. And what are you calling me for? Like I'm going to be able to control them. No, they control themselves. You know, the Black Riders with their craziness. Just getting them to not cuss out, you know, sitting in court cussing out the marshals, come pigs, the judge is a pig, ain't no good pig. I mean, come on, man. And it turns out, because they wound up getting some discipline, the bailiff in the courtroom where we started was telling the other bailiffs, leave them folks alone. And the judge, who they were calling a bourgeois pig, was giving them all kind of love. Because they recognized, yeah, even though they were kind of crazy, that they were opposing pigs, you know, pig behavior. But it took discipline to do that.
That's right.
What Nana calls fearless discipline.
That's right. That's right.
Fearless discipline.
That's right.
Don't be, you know, my part is like, don't be emotional. Don't get some kind of emotional gratification. You know, run up, yeah, y'all some pigs. Leave all that alone. You know, let's keep the hands off the chairman and off the Uhuru movement. This is the goal. It's not to get you some kind of emotional satisfaction. And when the comrade, they were burning the flag at the demonstration for in the invasion of Grenada, they wanted to burn the flag. I said, don't burn the flag. You're gonna burn the flag and cause these people to come in here and break up the meeting. Don't burn the flag. I said, but what you can do, he said, here's a knife, cut that mess into strips. If you want to destroy the flag, but if you burn it, that's arson. It'll break up the demonstration. Use your head. Stop using your all that. So yeah, man, we showed that you didn't show them nothing.
Just gave them another pretext.
Yeah, give them another pretext. And yeah, here's this one here, this one here, so we know where to go next time. But that's the primary thing. You know, we can go all night on what to do and what not to do. But raising money, I wish my clients would raise money from me.
Join this case.
We might need you.
We scramble. I think that's right on. And you know, we want all the democratic space. So we don't voluntarily give up the democratic space. We don't give that to them. I mean, they might come, they don't like what I'm saying. I know. I mean, I've said stuff tonight. You know, they don't like what I'm saying and what have you, and they may come for me because of that. But we can always point out that's why they came for me. So if there's going to be a lynching, it's going to be a public lynching, and people going to know why it happened and what have you. So we get a greater capability of defending ourselves from lynching, and that lynching has to serve to undermine them. You know, we cannot voluntarily give up the space. I like what Huey P. Newton used to say when he talked about how the revolutionary never voluntarily goes underground. Never voluntarily. I mean, you may be pushed underground, but you want to use all the democratic space that's there. We fought for that. Was no democracy in this country except what we brought to it as African people. We fought for it, bled for it, and damn it, you know, we're going to have to claim it for ourselves against those people, those undemocratic forces that brought us here at gunpoint, took this land from the indigenous people, stole half of Mexico, and haven't stopped since. So democracy is on our agenda, and they are anti-democratic forces, and that's the thing that we have to clarify. And we also have to help the people understand, especially Africans, but other people too. There are other people who bought into this narrative perhaps more effectively than we, that we have a right to be in control of our own affairs. And the truth of the matter is, if it be told, any rational white person who experiences what they might call exploitation or oppression should be doing everything they can to fight under the leadership of Black people. because we've been the vanguard in the struggle for democracy in this country. We have been. Even when mobs of white people have killed us and fought against us as Africans who fought for democracy. And they know that our struggle is relentless. We haven't stopped yet, despite all the church bombings and the leaders' assassinations, etc. And this is what I say, you know, if there's a problem for white women, it's caused by white power. If there's a problem with white homosexuals, it's caused by white power. If there's a problem with exploitation of white workers, it's caused by white power. And that if you want to end all of that, unite under the leadership of Black power that's fighting to destroy that and create a different world where there are no slaves and no masters and no workers and no bosses, and everybody can live a decent life, not at anybody at the expense of anybody else. That's the world we're fighting for, and we're arrogant enough to believe that we can bring it into fruition.
Right on. Right on. Yes.
Right on.
That sounds like a perfect place to end.
Hands off.
That was an excellent
Splendid.
summation.
Yeah.
So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Mwezi and Brother James, you know, for joining us for this JOCO. I think it was dynamic. I agree with the SADA. It was really great to get out to have this conversation. And we ain't turning back, right?
No,
all the way to freedom.
Hands off Uhuru.
Hands off
Africa.
Hands off Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Yes.
That's right.
Good night.
Don't forget to check out everybody's YouTube, right? And what the party's on Facebook, right? Black is Back Coalition is on Facebook. Look folks up. And by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the JOCO Collective channel and please like and let your friends know, right? We'll be back at it again, bringing this political education to the people.
Right on. All power to the people.
More power to the people. All power to the people.
But James, I would like to be in touch with you. I want to, some of these political prisoners and cases I'm interested in, especially that LA PFLP, you know, case, you know, so if you can hit me up, put it in something in the comment section. I want to follow up on that. And also your contact information. That would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll maybe I'll get in touch with you this time.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Let's see.
Thank you so much. Yes. All right, comrades. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
All right.
We're no longer live on YouTube.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
No hot mics.
No hot mics.
And the
Yes.
recording.
Yeah.
Very good.
And so we will
I'm really,
shall I send a copy of the recording to Ikenge?
Yes, that would be,
Yes.
that would work. Uhuru.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you so much, Sister Tasha.
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
Thank you. Yeah, this
James,
was
thought I
all
know you
great.
now, but-
It was, you know, everything. Yeah, it went smooth. We were good
Yes.
on time, even though we went over time. We were expecting that, so it was okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're it's not even 7:30, and that was really the overage, right? That extra 30 minutes.
Right.
right on.
Did you get James's number? You
I'm
see-
looking at it. Come in, Mwezi, will you get that?
Chairman, I got it, and
Okay.
I'll get that to you right away.
Yeah, but don't call me
I ain't gonna call you.
because I don't answer my phone. You text me.
Right.
Okay.
Text, yes.
Yeah, I'm really interested in getting some of that information, and also, you know, like we try to, the critical thing that we have to do is educate masses of our people around, you know, like what to do when confronted with the state, the police, and all of this. And so we do webinars and forums and things like that around that question. That's part of the best defense we can have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yes,
right.
sir.
Yeah. So
So I'm gonna send you an
Okay.
article real quick.
good.
Folks, I'm gonna
on the-
have to
the
duck
LA
out because I gotta take my
Yeah.
kids somewhere, but peace and power, okay? And
Yes.
see you
Right.
soon.
Right.
Give
Yeah,
Kimmy
do-
my love.
I'm gonna,
Do a Wesley Snipes and bounce. Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, no, thank you so much.
Comrades, I'll go ahead
Comrades.
and end the Zoom meeting. Did you exchange documents and stuff that you wanted first? Yeah, there we go.
yeah, I see something else in the chat. Let me grab that too.
Okay.
I want to make sure you get that before I.
And make sure that we can get him information too, right? I mean, even if you don't do it in the chat, you've got the information that we can shoot him stuff so he can be in touch. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, I'm sorry, I sent the wrong article. I sent Dylan Roof.
Well, yes, that'll be useful too. But yeah, I'll hold off so you can get that article there for the.
Yeah, there you go. Rest of Palestinians.
You got it in. Hold on one second.
good.
Yeah, I remember that. I was still at San Francisco State when that happened, and I remember reading about that.
I got it.
Yeah, but you can go from there, but there's lots of information on that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we appreciate the PFLP. They were really important for us out there.
Mhm. That's
All
right.
right, I can send that to you right now, Sharon.
All right.
All right, comrades.
Comrades.
Uhuru.
All right, y'all.
All right,
Uhuru.
relentless comrades, vanguard up. Uhuru.
Vanguard up.
Until it's won.
Yes, indeed.
All right, the meeting's gonna end on you, so just give me.
Okay.